you want to know a little bit about me first?
Yeah. So if you just explain like your job um, with the council and what you do within the community.
Yeah, yeah. So my job's a little bit it's not really unusual because it is community development, which is it's a profession within its own right. You've got various training qualifications. I've got a degree in youth and community studies, but it's an incredibly broad subject. So my job for the parish council is really diverse. So it's got a mixture of things. So it can be about supporting community groups at a very grassroots level, kind of helping some of the groups to get off the ground, put some of their structures in place. It might be like helping them to get a constitution, set up little management committees, so advice and guidance on policies. And then one of the main aspects is fundraising, so helping groups to kind of bring money into the area so they can kind of act on some of the kind of issues they come across.
So is there anything that you're working on at the moment?
There's a few little projects. Some are put on hold at the moment because of COVID.
Yeah.
I'm currently working. We've got a project. We've got a BMX track in Longwell Green. Done some initial consultation on that. It's 12 years old. It's not too bad condition, but it's not really don't meet a more generic need. So a lot of young people that go there, they'd really like to be able to kind of use scooters and different kinds of bikes, not just BMXs, but the track's pretty rough. So at the end of the consultation, the objective now is to get the complete track tarmac, sort of make it more people could use it, and it'd last a lot longer as well, be easier to maintain.
Okay.
So one of my projects, so my next step will be to draw the funding in to kind of cover those costs. The parish council that I work for will probably invest so much, but as part of my job is to bring that additional income in to get these kind of jobs done. Not last year, the year before, one of the biggest projects was the Warmley Forest Skate Park. So that was rather than a revamp, it's a complete new build. So that's like £160,000 project, but that was about 4 years work getting that job done.
Yeah, it takes a bit of time then.
Yeah, so so that process is all about kind of originally identifying the need and kind of getting a group of people to take that forward, doing really extensive consultation. But really, it's about bringing the community with you, and then putting that into the hands of the local community. So very often, my role is almost to be slightly in the background. So
Yeah.
it's all about kind of empowering people to get these kind of things done.
Yeah, so you sort of kickstart it and then sort of leave it to the community to work on it a little bit more.
Yeah, so I'm always there for kind of give advice, give it guide and kind of support and guidance, always at hand. But the main objective is really about not only giving the community a voice and a say in things, it's just enabling them to kind of do things for themselves.
Oh, wicked. So there was talk before about sort of getting people a bit more active, like putting like bike racks outside shops and stuff like that. Is anything happening with that? Is that going ahead?
Yes, that's a really cool one actually, because prior to COVID, we'd already been talking within the parish council about encouraging more people to walk and cycle. So we started off a little project, just having some initial discussions, and we formed a steering group. And the steering group started kind of trying to talk to the community about what are the issues about getting out and about, what are the problems, why would somebody get in a car to do a local journey rather than walk or cycle?
Yeah.
So that led to kind of doing quite an extensive piece of consultation. using it's mostly online, using this thing called Commonplace. Really nice bit of equipment, so people can just get up a map of a local area, drop a pin onto the map, and then put various comments in. So there's lots of suggestions, kind of talking about in relation to walking, about cars being parked on pavements, about the conditions of the pavements in the roads.
That's really good. What's that called?
It's called Commonplace.
Oh, that's really good.
It's quite an expensive kind of online platform to use, but it's very specific, and you can make it for the kind of situation you're trying to consult on. And the main thing that come out of that consultation, well, one of the main things is the Keynsham Road that goes from Willsbridge to Keynsham.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be kind of shared pathway for walkers and cyclists.
Yeah.
But it's really just not fit for purpose.
Single file, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so a lot of people kind of dropped a pin in that location and highlighted what they consider to be the issues in relation to like the path not being wide enough for people to pass. There's various pinch points as well. So it really highlighted it as a really dangerous road. So on the back of that, we've kind of now started to work with Keynsham Town Council, and had various meetings with Bath and North East Somerset and South Gloucestershire to see if we can get something done down there.
That's really good then. It's a really good it's a useful platform for everybody, because again, like you said, it gives everyone their voice. Everyone gets that chance to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, who else do you go to when you can't walk or ride your bike on that road?
That's right. So the outshot of that piece of work, we've now got a group called Bristol East Fringe Cycling and Walking Group. Quite a long name.
Yeah.
But it's got really good representation on that group, and we work in partnership with different councils as well. So it brings a larger group together. So hopefully we'll get that situation resolved.
That's really good. That's a really good platform. I've never heard of it, so that'd be interesting for people to hear about that. Actually, I think it'd be interesting to get something similar for antisocial behaviour.
Well, that's on the next plan. I mean, not only antisocial behaviour, but a really kind of broad range of issues. We'll be looking to do what's called a neighbourhood plan. This is really at the very early stages, so we're just about getting a foundation in place at the moment, talking to people about whether this is going to be the right approach or not. But primarily, it's about developing a whole range of policies for the council. So based around housing, about future housing development, if we need to build more houses, where houses going to go. Rules and regulations around maybe extensions, infills, also look at a retail development that's been hit drastically, particularly through the COVID as well.
Yeah.
So really about getting long-term plans in place regarding that. But to do that, you also need to look at the infrastructure like transport, how people get in about, what's the availability of your public transport. And your walking and cycling networks as well.
Yeah.
And then you also need like your community amenities, like your community centres, your libraries. So that massive bit of infrastructure that supports that. And the kind of reason for going through that process is you start to identify what the real issues are. And then you can start to put a plan in place to kind of see how you can kind of resolve some of those issues.
So where does Oldham Parish Council stretch out? How far does it go? Do you cover Longwood?
That's a really good question. There's very clear boundaries, but a lot of people that maybe live in Oldham Parish don't even realise they live in a parish area. But yeah, I mean, people can go on the Parish Council website, which is just www.oldhamparishcouncil.co.uk. There's a map on there that sets out the boundaries, but primarily it covers Cabra Heath is the central area, but it covers the majority of Longwell Green, Boris Court area, and the Wraxall Road area, right down to Warmley.
Yeah.
It's one of the largest parishes in England, so it's a pretty large parish. So population around about 15,000. I think about 6,500 households, and a very diverse area as well.
Yeah, it is quite a large area, and yeah, like you said, it's quite diverse. There's a lot of different classes, if you like. I know we've spoken before about like Cabra Heath being a more classed as a poverty area.
Yeah, for South Gloucestershire, they've now got four what they call priority neighbourhoods. They did have five. Filton was one, and Filton's no longer classed as a priority neighbourhood. But it's based on what's called the indices of multiple deprivation. It kind of highlights how deprived certain areas are. In Cabra Heath's made up of two small little areas, what they call super lower output areas. A little bit complex, but it kind of marks their position in relation to these areas of deprivation. Cabra Heath kind of falls within the bottom 50% in some areas. The one that stands out is around education, skills, and training. So they're around about in the bottom 20% nationally, which most little priority neighbourhoods are. A lot of the statistics though are a little bit historical though. When you look at the area, it relates to a lot of older people didn't take qualifications, and it's quite an elderly population within that area. So you've got to kind of give and take a little bit about statistics.
Yeah.
But I always kind of say to people, you've got to remember this is South Gloucestershire. It's a very affluent area. It's one of the most affluent areas in England. And we are talking about relative poverty. So when you look at areas like Cabra Heath, it may fall within the bottom 50%. And this is kind of ranked out of 32,000 areas. So if you're looking between 50% and 20%, somewhere between maybe 16,000 to 8,000 areas that would be more deprived in areas like Cabra Heath.
Is that nationwide, or is that
that's England?
Okay.
Yeah. So in England, you got 32,000 areas. So, and that's mainly made up around areas that consist of about 1,500 people. So the two areas from Cabra Heath represent 3,000 people. But nationally, there are at least 5,000 or 6,000 areas more deprived in what areas somewhere like Cabra Heath is. So the deprivation is not really substantial. But what South Gloucestershire's approach is, because it is South Gloucestershire is a really good place to live. So they're always keen to kind of boost places like Cabra Heath, Patchway is seen as another priority neighbourhood, and there's various parts of Kingswood and Staple Hill. So it just helps them to kind of give them that extra little kind of signpost and to say, we need to do a little bit more in these areas.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about places like Blackpool at the moment. They're at the very highest levels of deprivation in England. So
okay.
The first kind of 10 areas within Blackpool are kind of ranked 1 to 10. So they got very severe deprivation. So you'll be talking about incredibly high unemployment, very low economic activity, and that's when people will be in kind of serious need.
Yeah. So you said Cabra Heath split into two sections.
Mm-hmm.
How is that about? Is that like a border through like into two parts, or is it split into households of necessity?
It comes under two parts. At these 32,000 areas, to kind of make up Cabrahee, what's classed as Cabrahee. You've got two areas, and each one's made up of 1,500 people. So the actual areas, and it's another tool you use for kind of gathering statistics. So you can build up particular areas with these blocks of 1,500, what they call these super lower output areas. So for Cabrahee, you basically put these two blocks together, and I think it's one's class is like Coronation Park South, and the other is north. It covers like Longstand, Handstones area, goes into California Road. But they're just very useful tools for identifying any issues that might stand out.
Yeah.
But then you've also got health statistics as well about, in terms of things need to be focused on around health. I can go back quite a few years when you're looking at things like smoking. That's been reduced dramatically over the years.
Yeah.
And that's mainly because there was a really big push on what they were calling smoking cessation. So lots of courses, lots of support around helping people to give up smoking. So those kind of statistics are really good for kind of giving you that guidance of issues you need to focus on.
Yeah, and it's good to get those programs in place, obviously, for like the support. That's the most important thing, I think, is the support, isn't it? So what sort of things are going on in Cabrahee at the moment, support-wise?
There's quite a lot being delivered locally. From the parish council, we originally led what was called a priority neighbourhood steering group, lead organisation, and we handed that over to Juice Community Project a few years ago. And they're doing some really great work with different organisations, things like adult community learning, which is really that's the kind of thing they need to work on, because they need to kind of bolster those education skills and training. But they also kind of respond more to they run things like food banks and that kind of thing.
So I think we spoke about like food banks and stuff before. So how do you qualify for a food bank? Are you just do you just tip up at a food van, or like I don't know how it works with a food bank? Are you want to register because of a particular benefit system?
Yeah, I think people can be referred by various different organisations, which is probably the best way to do things, because there's been a problem identified. But what I think you've seen particularly through the COVID, is that's been made kind of readily accessible to anybody. So there's been things like food parcels, or you can just go and collect food from certain places.
Oh, really?
So I don't think it's based on any particular need, or you need to provide any kind of evidence that you're struggling.
Oh, well, that's a shame.
I think it's just responding to the kind of COVID situation. So kind of taking that more generic approach.
Yeah.
But
it's a bit of firefighting, I suppose, at the moment with COVID, isn't it? They're just sort of trying to put out as many fires as they can. I feel like the government have overlooked a few things.
I think so. I think hopefully, as we recover, these things can really get assessed and kind of evaluated to how things like food banks might be kind of accessed, and the kind of evidence base that kind of supports that.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really quite key to do is not to overlook any underlying issues that people might have.
Yeah.
If children are going hungry, particularly, to me as a community practitioner, especially from a youth perspective, that's an immediate safeguarding issue.
Yeah.
Children shouldn't be going hungry in this country, particularly in this country.
Yeah. Well, particularly in South Gloss.
particularly South Gloss, precisely. So if children are going hungry, that needs to be kind of assessed. These questions need to be asked. Why are these children hungry? Why are they going out without food? Is it because they're is it because their family members lost their job and they've not been able to make a claim for universal credit? Something's gone wrong there.
Another option could be people don't necessarily make the right choices with the income that they have got. So you see a lot of people utilising things like food banks. They've got an iPhone, they've got Sky, those little things. I'm not saying people shouldn't have those things, but it becomes what we need to do is get into the family and start working with the family a little bit more rather than just dishing out little bits of help. It's a difficult one. I don't know how you address it, but I think we could target the people that really need it, and then the people that need a little bit of support within the family. I think that would help things move on a lot quicker.
I think so. It may be a time now to kind of start focusing more on lifestyle choices at an earlier age. Focus more on that social education side. About kind of managing budgets and that kind of thing. About the healthy eating aspects. Shopping's not okay. The price of food have gone up dramatically over the last few years, but you've still got places where you can, not kind of promoting anybody in particular, but you can go to Aldi, and vegetables aren't particularly expensive there. But a lot of people that maybe the younger generation that's not had that kind of education or not gone through the difficult times that a lot of parents do, they don't get to kind of experience that, and I think they all almost need to be taught that.
I agree.
Projects based around that, about cooking on a budget and those kind of things.
Absolutely.
But most of all, it's got to be about raising their aspirations, and helping them to see a way out of poverty, or facing hardship. I think food banks and those kind of things are okay as an emergency. If somebody's kind of gone into a situation where they just got no income coming in, I think it's great to have something there at hand.
Not a long-term solution, though, is it?
No, it's got to be very short-term.
Yeah, we need to be starting to. Like you said, it needs to be an emergency situation, and then we need to start working with people on how to come out of that. It's not somewhere. Yeah. It's not a place you stay. There's a step 2, 3, 4. We move up those steps.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be living like. We shouldn't be living like that for a long period of time.
I think it's a political choice. I think pressure needs to be put on governments, particularly regardless of who's in government. We need to make sure that we shouldn't have things like food banks in this day and age. It's just not right, and this is pre-COVID. They were growing all around the country. They'd be getting larger and larger, almost becoming a bit of a social trend. Almost becoming socially acceptable to go to a food bank. But my argument is we shouldn't be doing that, and we should be putting massive pressure on governments to say this just isn't right. Regardless of who's in government, they shouldn't. We shouldn't be facing that kind of level of poverty in this country.
And I think again, like you said, with educating children in how to manage their money, I don't see why that can't be implicated into a school, into part of the school syllabus. It's super important. You're definitely going to use that skill, whatever you're doing. You're going to be using that to manage your finances for the rest of your life. So it's a really important skill to have.
Yeah, I think they used to have them. It used to be called home economics. We used to do kind of cooking and that kind of thing. And I think it was based around kind of managing budgets and that kind of thing. It's a desperate skills that young people need now.
I remember seeing home economics on my timetable once, but I didn't ever go to it.
No, no. Well, originally it was just targeted towards women, So I mean, it,
Sewing and stuff
as,
like that.
yeah, and as we know now, those skills can be taken on by gender. Shouldn't come into those things anymore. So but it's and I think when you're kind of running particular projects, especially with young people, and something you could do is kind of try and encourage them to resource their own materials, their own right from the very outset, so they get used to kind of managing money, managing budgets,
Yeah,
and taking on that responsibility.
yeah,
Because they're all able to, they're able to make kind of rational decisions, even at quite a young age.
yeah.
Um,
I've been working in SBL for the past couple of years, and they approached me recently to talk about a alternative provision for gardening.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's brilliant. I think that's a brilliant. And to be honest, to be fair to SBL, they're desperate to get into the community and start working with the likes of yourself.
yeah,
Um, they've offered me a few opportunities to work with them and the community as well. They're really keen to get out there and start hitting things from all angles,
yeah.
which
What would
is
you say is there anything? What would you say that particularly stands out from young people you're working with at the moment?
I think a lot of them just haven't got they ain't got a lot to do. I think kids are a bit bored. It was the same when I was younger. It's probably the same. It's always been the same, I'd imagine. There's not enough activity for them to do. Um, I think I think schools probably play a part in that. Not any school in particular, but the structure of it. I think from what I see, kids go into school at 8:45, sit down, and they read out of a book or off of a blackboard or whatever they're doing. Then they have a 20-minute break, and then they repeat that, and they have a half an hour break or 40-minute break for lunch, and they repeat that. And then they open the doors, and the kids just go mental. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like a pressure cooker. You're just boiling it up all day, and then you're like, off you go. And then you see on Facebook or social media, um, antisocial behaviour is on the rise. It's not on the rise. It's the same as it always has been. It's just
yeah,
it might be closer to your house, like at this moment in time, but it's always there and it always will be.
yeah,
While we're while we're while we're working with the children in this capacity.
yeah.
Um,
So you're not seeing education as being stimulation enough.
I don't think so. I don't think it didn't stimulate me at all. I think there's lots of barriers that we could overcome with education. For example, we know now it's fairly mainstream that we all learn in different ways. So some of us learn by touch, some of us are visual learners, some of us are a bit more audio. Um, but we're still trying to teach in a one size fits all way, and it doesn't fit in with a vast majority of the kids. Um, and then you chuck in sort of ADHD or any of the other little terms like that, and you really struggle to get kids to learn that way. We know that we learn better when our endorphins are pumping around our body, but we get them up, kick them out of the house at 8 o'clock in the morning. They get to school, sit back down, and they're sat there all day. Like I find it baffling that doesn't seem to be any change. When I walk around the schools now, if I took a photo and put it in black and white, you could not tell me what year it is.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that's a shame.
yeah. So you starting to recognize any change in attitudes from teachers?
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't. I think I think a lot of teachers I speak to are wary of what they say.
Mhm.
But I think they all the ones that I've spoken to, I mean, they must be, because there's a lot of alternative provision in place now. Usually it's for the kids that have been misbehaving a little bit, found themselves in isolation. What we've tried to do with my program is we've pulled in a lot of the kids that are struggling with a bit of low self-esteem. So there was a lot of kids that were they were saying they were being bullied. They were going to their head of year or their tutor saying they were being bullied. So when we went in and sort of dissected it a little bit, what we realised that there wasn't a lot of bullying going on. There's some, but there wasn't as much as what I thought there was. Talking to some of the parents that I spoke to, what it is a detrimental self-esteem. So some of the kids are walking around school, they get called a name, have a nervous breakdown. They just can't, they just haven't got the confidence to give a little bit of something back, or they just take it all to heart. So with the programs that I do, we use martial arts, a little bit of fitness stuff, some little bits of dialogue that I've put together to help bring them up. And within a few weeks, you see their confidence go through the roof. Yeah. And the best way to analyze that is to see the decrease in complaints about bullying. So it just stops. They don't need to do it anymore. They either learn a bit of confidence so they can give a little bit back and have a little bit of banter, which they should be doing, or they just let it brush off their shoulders. They're not interested. They know that they're a better person and they can just move on and get on with their day. So, but it's also interesting to see the difference once we've got the kids moving. So some of the kids I'm only seeing for an hour a week, but that little bit of activity, it changes the rest of their week. So some of them were in isolation every day when I started working with them. Right. Within a few weeks, it goes down to 1, maybe 2 a week. Within 6 weeks, it's gone. They're not in isolation hardly at all. And yeah, and the funny thing is, when they come off the program, you start to see it creep up ever so slightly. So it'll go from 0 to 1, and then as it goes on, you see it increase. And then after a couple of months, sadly you see them back in that same thing, the same they're stuck in that same routine. And I think it's because they just don't work in that academic structure. So if you pull them out, give them a little bit of motivation, give them something to think of. A lot of the kids I give a mantra to. So we find some positive words, give them a mantra. Some of them I give them a little band that goes around their wrist so they can say their mantra when they're flicking their band. Just little things, just to help them remember and stay on course. Yeah. But I don't think there's enough. There's not enough sense of achievement, especially if you're one of the kids that aren't academically gifted. So,
there's no real. Well, in some respects, there is a quick fix, but it needs to be sustainable.
So absolutely.
You're hitting results quite quickly, but they can soon start to kind of work their way back.
Yeah, that's right. So which only tells me that we need a change in the structure of the way that we're educating kids. We only got to look like just across the water and see Scandinavian countries doing things completely different and thriving, absolutely thriving. The mental health is reported much better. Education is actually, they get better grades. I know some countries have trialed starting schools later, so they might start at sort of 10:30 or 11 o'clock. And then by the time the kids finish school, go home and have their tea, it's too late to go out. So you see a decrease in antisocial behaviour as well. Yeah. So I think it's just time that we just looked at something different. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It feels like we're doing the same thing that we always have. And times have changed. Things are different. The kids have got all the information on their phone. They already know. They
Yeah.
can know in seconds.
Yeah.
They can look up the information quicker than a teacher can look in their textbook. So instead of sitting the kids down and telling them what's what, why not sit round in a circle and have a discussion about it?
Mhm.
Get kids active, get them moving a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So how about do you feel with what you're doing with the young people? Is there any engagement with the parents as well?
Some, yeah. So some I get really good connections with. Some not so much, but it's important. I think it's really important to have like a bit of a triangle system. So me or my company or whatever it is, any alternative provision needs to be in place, should be there. The parents and the school with the child in the middle. So they got no way out. There's no excuses. There's no telling one person one thing and then telling another person another thing. They're sort of stuck in this triangle of communication, and that's what they need. It's good support.
Yeah,
But also the teachers need support from the parents, and the parents need support from the teachers, and we all need to support each other. That's that sense of community, which I
yeah,
feel like has been lost. Um, like when I was younger, we'd hang around on the streets, and if I was doing something wrong, I'd know that my dad would know, and I'd get back home to a clout straight away
yeah.
because someone up the road would have given them a ring. That is gone. Uh, yeah, it's a shame, really.
So
Uh,
who do you think should be responsible for kind of facilitating that to try and get that kind of collective kind of attitude?
I'm not sure. I think it's really difficult because I feel like any bridges that were there are probably gone. So I don't think parents have got any confidence in the school. Not all parents, but a lot of kids that are maybe struggling a little bit from all levels. So if kids are being naughty, parents don't really want to hear that, so they blame the school. If the kids are being bullied, parents don't want that, so they blame the school. It seems to be the school's fault all the time. And to be honest, like I had that kind of view as well. Like the school weren't doing enough. Now I'm in there behind the scenes a little bit. Actually, they're doing a lot, like a hell of a lot. Um, and they all really put a lot of effort into the kids. Now there's like, I think SPL's got over 1,000 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really difficult to get a good idea of who each one of those kids are. There's probably 30 plus per class, I'd imagine. And they're moving between teachers, unless they've got like a double lesson. They're moving between teachers every hour. So to get a real idea, a sense of who that kid actually is really, really difficult. So the parents have lost confidence in the school. But again, the school have lost confidence in the parents. I know one of the teachers said they put on like a parent conference to invited all the parents in to have a chat. I think they got like 6 families
Wow.
out of 1,000 plus. So there's just a breakdown. You need a mediator now, and I think we need to get to know the teachers a little bit more. I think that'd be really important. I've spoken to the headmaster of SPL, and he said he's keen to come on. And I think that would be a really important podcast to have him on and see his view as a headmaster. I know he said to me about last week he was in 26 hours of meetings. Now, what kind of impact can he have on the actual structure of the school or the children if he's in 26 hours of meetings? But that's not the view that parents see. I think because I'm in the community and I'm also in the school, it's quite a good position for me to be in because I can see both sides of it. Now, I've heard the parents say before, like, oh, he don't even want to get involved with the kids. It's not that. He can't. He just doesn't have the capacity to do it. So I think having him on and getting his personal views, because he's a really nice guy and he's really, really interested in helping the kids. He put me in touch with a couple of kids last January, 2 kids that had been expelled at the age of 15. And his words were, it's immoral to expel 2 15-year-olds. Can you help them? And we got them into the gym, got them a maths and English tutor, and we got them to pass their maths and English, which they wouldn't have got if it wasn't for him putting that alternative provision in place. So he is there. I have the time by the sounds of it.
Just yeah, like you say, too busy running a business these days. I would imagine.
Exactly, and I feel that's the same probably for most teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they've got quite a bit of work on, trying to manage all those kids, and then their homework, and then their detentions, and then filing it to ahead of year, and I can imagine it's a nightmare for them. But
so it sounds like there's certainly scope for trying to bring everybody together, just to kind of repeat maybe something quite traditional. So, teachers get to know parents and parents really get to know the teachers. But at the heart of that, maybe it might be a lot more beneficial for the young people to see those kind of positive relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's really important to see parents and teachers talking. I think that would change a lot of animosity between parents and kids, parents and teachers, teachers and kids. It breaks it all down. There's no one of the reasons I went into SBL was a lot of parents were coming to me, the kids I work with within the community teaching martial arts and fitness. Parents were coming to me saying, he got put into isolation today, and all he did was drop a pen on the floor. Actually, that's not a real story. So I went in and spoke to one of the teachers, and I said, look, what's going on with this? This isn't right. Like, it sounds like a concentration camp. And he took me through the process, and some mistakes are made, which is human error. That I get that, but for the most part, kids aren't getting sent to isolation for dropping a pen on the floor. So just those little things. If the kids could see the parents and teachers having a chat, they're not going to go home and say this happened, because it would be a lie, and they'd be caught out straight away. So it breaks that animosity thing straight away.
Yeah. So maybe in terms of thinking about the future, about what could be done to maybe to try and get young people to start enjoy going to school, making that a more kind of pleasant process rather than, like you've been saying, it seems quite arduous and there's lots of animation. It's I don't know what's your feelings for the future.
Well, if we don't make any changes, the future will be the same as it is now. I think like anxiety and depression in young teenagers is getting worse, and I don't see that getting any better with what we're doing. Some of the cases that I've seen within schools that I work in are really bad anxiety, really bad depression. And I feel like we could change that with some simple adjustments. Stop teaching kids in a one-size-fits-all way. It just doesn't work. It's not fair on kids that have got other needs. So that could change. Really simple, by having an open discussion about a topic rather than writing on a board, looking in textbooks. But I don't feel like we're miles away from that. It just needs a restructure of a classroom. I don't think that's too difficult to change. The other thing that needs to be put in place is like a sense of achievement. So at the moment, if a kid's playing up, being naughty, getting sent to isolation, just because he's not academically talented, gifted, he's already on the back foot. So he's not going to get any rewards for producing poor work. He's not going to get any rewards at home. There's just a constant nothingness unless he misbehaves, and then he gets attention, he or she.
Yeah.
Which is another reason to change the structure of the classroom, in my opinion. Just little things like, so if a kid doesn't know the answer to a question, he knows that everybody in the class is looking in his direction, or he thinks it. It might not be happening, but he's definitely thinking it. Teacher comes over, explains a question, he still didn't understand it. Teacher comes back over, he's put his hand up for a second time. Now everyone's definitely looking at him in his mind. Mm-hmm. She'll do that again, or he'll do that again, explain the question. He's not going to ask a third time. First of all, she hasn't got the time, so she's losing her patience. Even the best teachers can't get around 30 plus kids asking the same question 3 or 4 times.
Sure.
So now he's lost his confidence completely. He's not going to put his hand up anymore. So what else is he going to do for the next 45 minutes? Poke his mate with a ruler. He's going to try and get some kind of sense of achievement from somewhere. And for some of these kids, the only way to get those rewards is to mess about. Because then their mates will be like, saw what you've done in class, that was wicked. Now there's reward systems that dopamine's come in. Even though it's not a good thing in society, he's still getting those rewards. He gets the laughs. And that's where the downfall is. That's how they start to live their life then, by breaking something or picking someone up to get a laugh, and that's where they get the rewards from.
Yeah, sure. And this is pretty much, I mean, you're talking about kind of post-COVID as well. Now with schools likely to go back quite soon, discussions I've been having and kind of reading various literature, I think one of the issues might be that where some young people have been out of school for such a long time and not within that kind of mindset of learning, they may have kind of lost any sense of direction. So, I mean, from your experience of being in school, what do you think how do you think that could impact on their learning?
Massively. I think over the last year, kids have had minimal communication skills. Anything face to face has been limited. I think it's going to be really difficult when they go back. I think it's going to be a real challenge for them.
You could find even more young people looking to grab that attention.
I think I'm more worried about the anxiety that's gonna come up, because a lot of these kids haven't really been to school for the last year. I know homeschooling has been in place, but it's difficult to learn homeschooling. Even for myself, like trying to learn from a laptop, it's not an easy thing to do. So I think the anxiety levels are going to really, really come up. I'm sure that the schools are putting things in place to assess everybody before they go into their next year, because that's what we're going to be looking at. By the time COVID's over and they're into a full, back into a full structure at school, it's going to be close to the end of the school year, the academic year again. So they've already missed a year of school, and they're going to be going into the next year. Whatever year that is going to be a more challenging one than the last one. Topics are going to be more in depth. It's going to be a bit more difficult, more homework, and they're not going to be ready for it.
So they really need to be emotionally resilient.
Yeah, they do. I think that anyway. I think there's not enough focus on kids managing their emotions. There's not enough safe places for kids to express themselves and be a bit free. I think it's difficult for teenagers. It's always been difficult for teenagers, but I think with what we know now, it doesn't have to be that way anymore.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. So
lots
do
of
you think, in addition to your the work you're already doing in schools, if there was more time kind of dedicated to maybe small group work, where young people are allowed to be kind of a little bit more expressive, um, do you think there's going to be more demand for that, or more need?
I think there'll be more demand for it. I think hopefully as we move out of COVID, it's sort of all these points are a bit highlighted on their own. I think there's definitely going to be more demand for it. I think we need alternative provision, so outside of school, kids leaving school campus to work outside, but also having people come into the school to work with kids. I think it's difficult when you've been in a school for 3 or 4 years. You've not really been achieving that well. Your relationship with the teachers is broken down. Nothing they can do is going to help. You need to put outside help to get that motivation back. But I think alternative provision should be working with the school. I don't think it should be a separate thing. Again, it's just building that communication stuff. So I think it'd be nice to see an alternative provision come in, maybe like a music group to get the kids like playing some music. I know one of the teachers at SPL is a really good drummer. So to take half an hour out, come in, bang the drums a little bit, shows a little bit of his personality, and it gives talk to them about. And I think that's a real issue for me is the teachers are here and the kids are here, and there's no connection for them. There's no personality or personability. It just, I think that could easily change. New conversations, workshops.
It's too big of a void between those relationships.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's one of the first things that you could change. Now, I'm sure a lot of teachers wouldn't be happy about it, but why don't they just call them by their first name?
Yeah.
I don't see that as a problem. I don't know why anyone would really see that as a problem. In the 1920s, when everyone was called sir, it makes sense, but we're not in that age now. And we need to move with the times, which is, I think, it's probably one of our country's biggest issues. We don't do that. We're just still doing stuff that we did 100 years ago.
Yeah, and perhaps that old kind of feelings about what constitutes respect. I mean, that respect could be seen through paying more attention to one another,
absolutely
listening to one another,
yeah.
Rather than kind of looking up to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't feel like being called sir is a sign of respect. I think if I teach a class and they do what I ask them to do and learn, that's respect enough, isn't it? Yeah. They've shown that they've listened and they've took in the information that I've given them and they've presented it to me back on a piece of paper or as a model or whatever it is. That's a respect enough for me.
Yeah. So how much of a challenge do you think that would be to, if you were to have that conversation with some of the teachers and maybe even a head teacher, how would you anticipate them responding?
I don't know, but I'm going to have that conversation next week.
Cool. Yeah,
I'm going to have the conversation. So I've got a lot of different theories about education and the structure of school. And the thing is, I've not had anyone offer me any reason why we're doing it this way. Everyone seems to be on the same page as me.
Yeah.
So I'd be really interested if anyone else has got any views to support the structure as it is now. I'd love to hear it. I'd love for someone to come on and say, well, this is why we do it. And if I think they're right, I'll change my mind. But I can't see how it's effective at the moment at all.
Just so interesting. And really, if we think about also, we're supposed to be a democracy, but how how often do we speak to young people in school about what they see as being the best way of approaching things? You know, what is the best way for them to learn? How often do we ask young people that question?
Never, I would imagine.
You know, so
Yeah.
they're not actually having a voice within that system, and maybe again that could be one of the starting blocks to you know, let the young people start to have a stronger voice within that education environment.
Yeah, and there you got a confidence and achievement straight away.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
It's,
It just doesn't. It doesn't feel like we're. It's not so far away that it's unachievable. It would need to be done in bite sizes for sure. But taking away that Sir, Miss, and just calling people by their first name. I mean, if you imagine you're walking down the road and you see a friend of yours, and you say, "Oh, morning, Mr. Smith." It's not the right. It's not. You've lost your connection straight away. But if you say, "All right, John,"
yeah,
it feels different, doesn't it?
yeah, definitely, and it is. I mean, within this short kind of time we've just been talking now, it's just so evident that something needs to be done to encourage those relationships to start to flow. So that particularly the young people that's going back that are really going to be really struggling with the whole COVID environment and going back into the educational environment, you know, they need to be kind of have that confidence to be able to talk about how they feel, what issues they feel they're going to be faced with.
And as soon as you put them into, sorry, Steve, as soon as you change the structure of your class and have it as a discussion, you can open that discussion from any topic into emotions and experiences, and it just flows, a nice flowing movement, and it's all there. Kids get used to sitting in a group and discussing. At the moment, they're sat in a classroom and they got to shut up or they are off.
Yeah. I mean, something we always done at the beginning and at the end of the youth project was reflective practice. And at the heart of that was just enabling young people to talk about how they feel, how they felt during the session, what perhaps could be done better, what more could they do, what do they perceive the issues to be. It takes like 10, 15 minutes and you can have that really nice kind of relaxed conversation. And there's nothing more than empowering than somebody feeling that they're able to talk and they're being listened to.
Yeah.
And from my old school, and I'm going back quite a long way, it's a long time since I've been in school, but you could never do anything like that because it was the old yes sir, no sir. And so,
I don't think we're too far away from that now, though. That's my point. I don't think we're too far away from that yes or no sir thing.
Yeah. So maybe if it sounds like SBL are really starting to maybe open their eyes to alternative suggestions, but maybe it's about how is that going to be put into practice.
I wonder if the reason things like this haven't been put into practice is the pressure that are on the faculty. So like the headmaster is in nearly 30 hours a week of meetings, and that puts pressure then on every single tier down the line.
Or I wonder if they could be confident for somebody else like yourself to kind of go in and start testing some of those changes, start testing those kind of faults and ideas.
Yeah. I think that's what's needed. It's like I think they need almost like a project manager to come in and just be working within the school and not teaching anything. They're just in and moving things around and a little bit more teacher training maybe, but not teacher training. They're all good at their job. Not teacher training to teach them how to teach. Teacher training how to teach them how to communicate with other children.
Yeah. Or enable the ones that want to do that. And I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's teachers that are thinking, I'd love to be able just to sit down with the young people in a group and just spend like the next 30 minutes just having a good old chat.
Yeah,
And just trying to enable that, because I'm sure a lot of teachers will probably shy away from that because it's probably they're not expected to do that.
yeah,
And have that real heart to heart. It's almost like taking empathy into the school environment. Perhaps.
absolutely.
So,
I think so. Have you heard of transactional analysis?
yeah.
That's what's needed.
Mm,
Some
yeah.
transactional analysis courses within the school. I think that would change the way that people communicate. It helps everything. Helps the staff communicate with each other. Kids communicate with each other as well. It could really benefit. That'd probably be my first point of call if I was to make some changes. Some transactional analysis courses, short courses, and then stripping that Sir Miss rubbish off the front of their name.
Yeah.
Get rid of that.
So it could be really valuable if we can start having that conversation with some of the teachers, particularly a head teacher,
Yeah,
that would be open to kind of testing some of these ideas, with obviously without taking on too much themselves, because we've already spoke about that's one of the biggest problems is, have they got time to do these things? In order to kind of even consider such changes. Whereas at the moment, they just got to be very focused on doing what they're doing. And I imagine in their mindset, just to keep doing what they're doing because that perhaps all they got time to do.
yeah. I think that is I feel like that's probably the heart of the problem. Just time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So perhaps that's something you could offer them, or we could offer them, is a bit of time. To kind of do these different things, try out different kind of scenarios.
yeah,
And I think there's lots of different organisations that over, particularly like over the last 5 or 6 years, is that we'd love to be able to go and work in a school,
yeah,
and to build these relationships. Well, and I think we just been talking about what that barrier is, and that real barrier is just simply time. And it's also confidence, having that confidence for a teacher to open their doors up to the wider community,
yeah,
or that's going to bring in different ideas, different ways of doing things.
yeah,
But it's really kind of trying to get that confidence from a key person within that school that says, yeah, let's do this. Let's try something out.
yeah. It's difficult to stand out sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm.
God knows how many secondary schools there are in the country, but they're all doing the same thing, and you're doing something different. You better get some good results.
Yeah, they're all probably stuck in the same place, and
Yeah,
I can imagine there's quite a few head teachers that would just love to try something different,
yeah,
um, but they're just kind of stuck within their kind of traditional kind of routines, and really got that just that time to adapt. Um, yeah,
yeah. It'd be interesting to see where the decisions lie. Um, I'd imagine it doesn't stop at the head. I'd imagine there's a next level of decision making somewhere.
yeah, it's all, whether it's like the academies now, so you've got your trustees, and or you've got your school governors, and
Yeah,
the other cases. So but there's quite significant groups of people to try and kind of accept that change needs to be made. But it's ideally it needs to happen from the inside. If it was to happen from the inside, it'd be so much easier for like heads or trusts to say, right, let's adapt, let's start changing the way we traditionally do things. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think if that was going to happen, it would have happened by now.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, a lot of schools, they're not governed so much by Ofsted now, particularly free schools. They can choose their own curriculum, so those opportunities are there, but are they really confident enough to kind of make some quite radical changes?
Yeah, well, I don't think people really know um, the options of education they've got for their children. Um, what's quite interesting is you can homeschool permanently. And it's perfectly legal to do that. You can go to a free school. There's lots of different options. And I think if schools, especially now they're becoming academies and businesses, if schools don't move with the times and start putting different measures in place, people are going to start taking those options.
Yeah, yeah. I'm wondering if as a potential project. I mean, I think it's great us talking about this, and I know we both had similar experiences with in our education.
As in, we didn't have one.
in kind of outlook, but maybe going back to the actual young people, the pupils themselves, to see how they really feel about things, and maybe if it was to put a proposal forward to maybe SBL about having that kind of external somebody from the outside, although you're already working there, to do quite some in-depth consultation with the young people around their kind of attitudes towards education, what changes would they like to see, what would make them feel more happier about going to school, those kind of questions that they wouldn't ordinarily get asked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. I think we'd have to structure it in a particular way. Most kids don't know what they want.
No.
They've got no, at the moment, there's never been another option. Like, that is what school is. So we'd have to give them like a checklist, I think, of different options.
Yeah, or maybe do it in small groups, so you can get them to a situation where they're really chilled and kind of relaxed, and almost try to give them a blank canvas. If you've never been to school before, and you had the opportunity to create your own school day or create your own lesson, what would it actually look like?
Yeah,
that would perhaps be a better kind of form of consultation. Kind of doing that in a really creative way.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Get like 8 of them in a classroom and say, right, design the classroom, put the table where you want, put the teacher where you want.
Yeah,
and start using that creativity.
Yeah,
I think that's another part of something that's missing. There's just not enough opportunity to be creative anymore. Kids aren't bored enough.
Yeah.
Kids have got iPhones and Xboxes and iPads and all sorts of stuff. They're never bored.
Yeah.
And I wonder what impact we're going to see later on in the next couple of generations on art and crafts and that kind of stuff. Because
interesting that on the last project I ran, a lot of the boys got into doing sewing because the girls were already doing it, and they trying out things like crochet, but they were actually finding it really stimulating.
Yeah,
and that was quite bizarre. A group of like 12 and 13-year-olds kind of sat around with their crochet needles, just but they were having some really great conversations whilst they're doing that.
Yeah, that's it. Because so when you're occupied in something repetitive, it just lets your thoughts just flow out a little bit more. You don't. By the time you've done a few bits of crochet, you're not really thinking about what you're doing. It's like colouring in. It just starts to flow, and your the stigmas start to slip away.
Yeah, just making things. We made a lot of things using felt. One of the most popular things was the animation, so making things kind of models out of plasticine. But you get a small group together, 3 or 4 young people, just kind of creating a little scene. The conversations they have, and they're very open with each other. What we kind of, the outcome from that was we never had kids falling out with each other. It was about them getting to know each other, getting to trust each other, have confidence in one another, and that developed that respect.
Yeah.
And it is, you know, as much as we need to talk to each other as adults, young people do as well.
Yeah.
They need to be open with you. And to me, that's where that emotional resilience comes in, is be able to hold that conversation, whether it's like one-to-one or whether it's in a kind of group situation. So like you say, when these things happen within school, somebody walks by and makes a snide remark at another young person, that young person's not going to take no notice.
Yeah.
But in the long term, hopefully you wouldn't have that young person making that snide comment in the first place anyway. Because they'd have greater respect for that other young person walking along the corridor.
Absolutely, and that's similar to how I run my programs. When I first start working with the kids, I use boxing.
Yeah.
So almost all of the kids that come in, none of them have done boxing, but it takes a couple of minutes to teach them how to throw a jab. So straight away, you've got that sense of achievement. Your endorphins and dopamine levels are on the rise. And I get them to pair up. If there's an odd number, want to go with me, so I usually try and pick the one. Like I'll sift through the group and pick who needs the work the most, and I'll work with them. But I get them to pair up. So one person's holding the pad, right? I make them give positive feedback. So they say, like, I'll make them talk to them. So if their jab's not straight enough, or if it's too high, or whatever it is, but I make that person give them some feedback.
Yeah.
And it just breaks those barriers down straight away. They can be from different year groups, be a boy and a girl, it doesn't really matter who it is. It breaks the barriers down. You all get a sense of achievement, and you get a chance to work with each other.
Yeah.
But we chuck a little bit of banter in as well. Like they'll throw a jab, and I'll go, "Oh, that was rubbish."
Yeah.
And no one has a nervous breakdown. They try again, and they all have a laugh, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's meant to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's teaching. That's your style of teaching.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about now. And it is those young people having that kind of relationship with their other teachers within the classroom environment. You know, if you can have that, then I'm sure the young people would probably engage a little bit more and not, it's as well as making snide remarks to each other, making those snide remarks to their teachers behind their back as they're writing, doing something on a whiteboard.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I find really interesting actually is just as part of the one of the programs, I said to everyone, right, this is about 3 weeks in, so I'd only known the kids for 3 weeks. So right, I want you to go home this week. I want you to find me like an inspirational person, someone that you aspire to be like. And one of the girls said, "Don't need to do that. I've already got it." And I said, "Right, who is it?" And she said, "It's you." And I've only known her for 3 weeks, and that's like, I had loads of heroes when I was growing up, like Jackie Chan and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Rocky, and where are the inspirations for kids?
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's and they've got to think about it. You know, they got to think about who inspires them.
Yeah.
And I think very often is somebody quite close to them. I mean, your footballers. I mean, Marcus Rashford. He's been making, he's been quite prominent in the press with kind of putting pressure on the government about the free school meal kind of scenario. Does it make him a role model? I think so, because it kind of, I would hope young people would get to see that, you are able to make a noise, you are able to kind of raise your voice when you want somebody to listen.
Yeah.
in authority. But he went about it in a really good way. I think he approached it in the right way, and that come across as really good. But when you look at things like politics, it'd be great. We need younger people involved in politics.
I agree.
What's encouraging young people to get involved in politics You know, I mean, it's incredibly difficult for anybody in government at the moment with the COVID scenario. But you know, are there any role models shining through this throughout this pandemic at the moment? You know, this whole thing around trust, and of course, young people they've got the media in their face all the time. Now, you know, they're so aware about current affairs. You know, most young people know about Donald Trump. You know, in what kind of a role model was he? You know,
Yeah.
uh, so, but we need role models everywhere, but particularly within politics, because they're the decision makers, you know, and we need future decision makers. We need confident young people that are going to listen to people and make them come up with the right decisions.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so,
I agree. I think social media plays an odd part with role models. I think a lot of the kids want to be like Instagram models.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and
and
they're incredibly bad platforms at the moment. You know, all the racism that's going on.
yeah,
You've got to look on social media; it's there.
yeah,
And there's a good discussion on Good Morning Britain this morning. I mean, Piers Morgan, love him or hate him, but I think sometimes he encourages some really good discourse. You know, but they were saying about, you know, all the social media like Instagram, your Twitter, your Facebook. You know, if somebody kind of posted something that had a kind of commercial impact, financial impact on their services, they'll respond within no time. You know, within hours to take something down.
yeah,
Yeah, in relation to racism, that could be on there for days.
yeah,
You know, so there's a massive imbalance there at the moment,
yeah,
and that's not portraying a good picture for young people to kind of look up to. You know, even social media, they got a responsibility to act within the best interest of everybody. You know, so
well, I think that's that's a problem with a lot of these multi-billion-pound companies. They don't seem to have much responsibility or take any accountability at all. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about Amazon. So I ordered. What did I order? I've got a video of it. I'll share it with you. It's like a little memory stick, and the box was you could fit a TV in it. It's absolutely enormous. But
yeah,
it's not the first time, and I'm not the only one. So my partner's dad and another friend of mine sent me videos because I was having a moan about it on social media. And there's where it's exactly the same, like just constant packaging, cardboard and stuff like that.
yeah,
You've got another friend of mine who runs a company called Vitor Connection or Connective. It's an online clothing company for like skaters, motorcycles, and surfing. But it's all the material is like morally sourced, and they put their proceeds to grow to the Eden Project,
okay,
growing trees with their proceeds.
yeah,
So you've got like a friend of mine who's got a little online company growing trees, and you've got a multi-billion-dollar company like Amazon just chucking cardboard away.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's no accountability there. And if I was the government now with COVID, I'd be targeting companies like that and putting a cardboard tax in.
Yeah.
Same with plastic. There's no need to go to Asda and get free peppers wrapped in a plastic. Put a tax on the plastic, stop it being used. There's no accountability.
It's a problem with our political system and our lifestyle. We got particularly what the Conservatives support, and that's this free market economy. You know, and you can see it as plain as day. You know, these companies are kind of left to do whatever they want. You know, it's all about creating massive profits. You know, and for the benefit of their shareholders,
Yeah,
not the general population. And that's where we miss out. You know, there is this massive imbalance, not just in, I would say, not particularly looking at just Conservatives or the Labour, because we've had Labour governments have been exactly the same. There's not been a government that said that is really opposed to free market economy that favours profit over anything else. We got to generate money in order for us to survive as a country.
Yeah.
But surely by now it should be sending out that message. We got to do things more responsible. We got to give our young people a lot better message than what we're doing at the moment.
Absolutely, we're trying to work on like climate control and the environment and stuff, and we're just allowing these massive companies just to exploit the planet.
Yeah.
And then telling the kids not to drop litter.
Yeah.
It's such a mixed message all the time.
I know, and we're kind of making these decisions. We've got these plans now to be kind of carbon neutral by 2030. We're never going to hit that in a million years. But I think we're also giving that false impression to our young people. Now, young people seem to be really interested in all the kind of climate emergency and environmental issues. We really need to kind of get on board with that, I think, and work with our young people around those issues.
Yeah, I agree. Capitalize on it.
Yeah, but I mean, we're going to be doing a fair bit on the parish council for our job. So everything we do, we'll be looking to see how that fits in with the climate change, whether we're making the right environmental decisions. But we also need to be speaking to our young people about that.
Yeah.
Because and they got an interest. So if we want to engage with our young people, we've got to engage with them, involve them in the right conversations that they're going to be interested in.
Absolutely. Drawing their attention in with something and then showing that there's other options.
Yeah, but I'd be really keen to do something in schools with young people around kind of having that conversation, really open conversation about their education.
Yeah, well, I've got an opportunity that I'm going to talk to you after this finishes. That's a little opportunity that you might be interested in. So we can have a little chat in a minute.
Oh, excellent.
Do you think we've said enough for today?
Well, how do you think it's gone? Let's do a podcast evaluation, a bit of reflective practice for our first attempt.
Yeah, it's been good, I think. Do you want me to stop the recording?
No, keep it running there. Because this is what I think we need to encourage is people, when you've done something, have that bit of conversation about how things went. And just have that kind of honest conversation. So when you do it next time, you can perhaps be a little bit more confident.
Yeah.
And like we've been saying about, young people have got all these anxieties. Well, something that can help to take that away is enable to help them have that kind of conversation about how they feel, about how things went.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's weird, isn't it? We have these conversations like every 2 or 3 weeks, and they go on for hours, and you don't think twice about what you're saying. You just talk, and we never say anything different to what we've just said.
No.
But you still sort of think, oh, am I saying the right thing?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly got anxieties because I'm a little bit concerned because I've got my kind of opinions because we spoke about things like food banks in that earlier and about deprivation.
Yeah.
I'm a practitioner. I've been doing this nearly 20 years. I've been working in that environment, but I've got my own very personal opinions that very often I don't get to talk about.
Yeah.
Very often is when we have our conversations, I find myself being a lot more open and expressive.
Yeah.
When we're talking about things like food banks, my opinion is we shouldn't have food banks. We need to eradicate them.
Yeah.
Not because it's a bad thing that people do. I think it's brilliant that people are willing to help people out so much. And I think people need to be kind of applauded for that core community spirit, but at the same time, we need to be shouting out, getting that message out. We should not be doing this in this day and age.
Yeah, the funds could be probably filtered into better uses, I think.
Yeah, so it's about having that confidence to have that open and honest conversation about these things, and it's like the education, not just let things carry on the way they are just because it's an easy option.
Yeah,
Let's have these serious conversations where somebody will think completely different to me, which I'm really not concerned about. I think that's a valuable thing, but we need to have these conversations to put these things into context.
We do. It's like it is nerve-wracking talking about things that are quite close to my heart. Talking about the school, like some people are going to take both of what you said about like the food banks and stuff, and what I've said about education. People are going to take that in the wrong way, and that's not that's not how it's meant to be. The whole point in the podcast is to just shine a light on it, shine a light on these subjects, and find out why we're doing it. And I'd love to see people. I'd love to speak to people with an opposing view, because I can't find anyone at the moment. So I'd love to. Anything that I've said is not to offend anybody. It's just my view, and I feel like we could definitely make some changes. But I'm open to conversation, discussion, and see what we can come up with together. Because I'm sure there's a medium in between, like someone who enjoys the academic structure and my view. I'm sure we could come to something that meets everybody's view, even with a short conversation.
Yeah, and I think this is what the podcast is about, and I think we can put that empathy there, can't we? We can be open. We need to be open to other people's views and opinions. But let's have this conversation, but most importantly, let's get something coming out of this as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the most important things is like what you said before about the social pedagogy. Is having a platform where people can share their view without being absolutely brutalized.
Yeah.
Because that's what social media would do. If you were to put a post up saying that about food banks in black and white writing, you'd have like people for it and people against it, but there'd be no dialogue, there'd be no conversation. And I'd like to have a platform for people. We could have 2 or 3 people on, having a good chat from different backgrounds and different perspectives, and I think it's just it'd be nice to have a place where people can discuss and then just walk away after a normal discussion rather than having a punch up at the end.
I know. Well, maybe we need to have this brief conversation at the start of the podcast, just so people know where we're coming from. First of all. And to know that door is open to people to have that conversation. And it's platform for people to say how they feel, in order to kind of progress some kind of change. And that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see some change come out of it. So some of the things we talk about, I think we can reflect upon and then think, how can we put this in action? How can we action this? Or who else do we need to speak to kind of bring on board to get this done?
Yeah, that's right. I think that's the most important thing for me. A lot of people are sort of floating around just doing. No one's really asking any questions about it. It's just like, oh, my kids go to school and that's what they do. But no one's really like, why are they doing it that way? And just by listening to our conversation, you can sort of, these questions start coming up. Oh, I've never thought about that before. And that's important, I think.
Try and bring people on board. Okay, cool.
Wicked. Shall we end it there?
Yeah. How do you normally end a podcast?
The end. I don't know. Right, I'll stop recording and then we'll catch up again in a few weeks, I suppose.
All right. Cheers, mate.
All right,
Awesome.
nice one.
Yeah.